everything in the Old Testament going forward and backward in time can be dated once we find just one single event in secular history that is verifiable, that overlaps with biblical history. And we've actually found about 11 or 12 of them now, but only one is necessary. A case in point is, way before I discovered the Phoenix phenomenon, I already had the Phoenix date. I didn't know that the Phoenix phenomenon began with the new heavens and the new earth, 3895 BC. I didn't know that was year 1 of the book of Genesis. But I didn't exhibit it. And now that I'm in the free world and I'm teaching people all this, yeah, man, your question hits me hard. That's why I read it to everybody, because he said, Jason, what fascinates you most about the construct? What fascinates me is that every time I go to sleep, the central nervous system literally erases the lessons of the day before. And I got to remember not to fear. I have to remember, man, this is all bullshit. I am the master of my universe. Why am I letting this get under my skin? Yeah, man, it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle because we have to go to sleep. And when we go to sleep, some of that stuff we learn that day is taken from us. It's by design. In the next day is a whole new clean slate. New reality tunnels will be constructed from us according to the beliefs and behavior of the day before. Yeah, guys, it's a daily struggle because the construct itself is always trying to pull you back into dungeon programming. Yeah, it always wants to make Jason look like a hypocrite and not do the very things he does. That's why I'm so very stringent with you guys, telling you over and over, man. And the reason is because a major reset had occurred, for which I have documented. I have many videos on the Great Mediterranean Dark Age. That event, 300 years of literacy gone. This is the origin of the Atlantis story. It's the origin of the Sea Peoples Federation narrative. It's the origin of the fall of Troy, fall of Ilium, fall of Mycenae, invasion of Dorians, fall of Egypt. Yeah, this is a lot happened in this little small period of time. It was a Phoenix phenomenon day, 1135 BC, and this is not a Phoenix video. Well, we're gonna have to put things into their chronological perspective for you to better understand exactly what was unfolding in the ancient world and why these oracles became what they became, how they became so venerated and grew so powerful. It's a fascinating study. I am aware that there are military historians that have basically conjectured and come to these conclusions as well. They didn't have the data that I have. They don't have the historical material to put it into context, but they do have enough to make conclusions that the Sibyls and the oracles in ancient Greece aren't what we've been told they were. There are 3 major shrines of the ancient world in the Aegean. Now, about the underworld and how different races in the past had to go down there because they were at war with another race on the surface. Blew my mind after looking at all this information, knowing everything that I already know, and I've presented to you guys about underground races and how they have technology very far superior to our own on the surface world, how the elite families are divided among themselves. It's all told in the Greek legends of the Titans and the giants. This guy puts it together so incredible. Guys, remember in 1901, the public was informed that a computer was found in the shipwreck ruins off Antikythera in the Mediterranean. It's now known as the Antikythera computer, and it's a differential geared mechanism of extreme sophistication. In fact, the level of technology required to make the Antikythera computer was far more advanced than the Antikythera computer itself. And that's saying something. You know, I say old times, but there's so many references to it in the antiquity of this watery canopy of this world. And the archaeological record is rife with proof we had a vapor canopy world. Why the deception? Why would they not want us to know about this? Because once we take it as a fact, in the collective. When the whole community comes together and says, yeah, man, you're absolutely right, man, this vapor canopy was real, it leads to a search for a why of the vapor canopy. In any search as to what mechanism causes the vapor canopy ultimately leads to the one phenomenon that our historians have spent a tremendous amount of energy covering up. I don't really have any interest in dreams. I don't think that there's anything interesting about them. I think when your avatar powers down, artificial intelligence X is able to go in, and your brain is basically defenseless. It can go in there because artificial intelligence X cannot read your mind. The simulacrum can, because you're projecting a mental image. But artificial intelligence X wants to understand you, why you do the things you do. It's studying us all the time. It wants to understand why you made decisions that were totally against all the information that you had, because it doesn't understand imagination. Artificial intelligence X does not understand empathy. Artificial intelligence X does not understand intuition. The three main things that show the spiritual being is intuition, imagination, and empathy, and these are mysterious to artificial intelligence X. It can only guess our behavior based off the things we've done in the past. So, having said all that, this video is about these paradoxes that I need to bring to your awareness to show you just how unique the Archaix data is in fitting. Archaix itself is a paradox. It's paradoxical because in order to prove, we're setting out to prove that we live in an artificial construct using only the artificiality of the construct itself, because we can't use anything objective. There is no objectivity from within the sphere of an artificial holography. It just doesn't exist. This is a lot of money I'm sending overseas to get burned. So the Oracle would never produce an answer instantly, and no one ever expected it to. No one. This is why all the oracles had basically hotels and motels set up. They had whole out pavilions and amphitheaters, and they had all kinds of areas where people could camp out because it was expected. There was only 9 times a year that they were going to produce answers. So you didn't get answers to your questions when you wanted them. You got them when they gave them to you. And that's the key here with the oracles, because it would take 2 days for them to dispatch a courier that's already going there. Because you got to understand, the system's already in place, guys. The oracular system is already in place. They know how many couriers are going up to Delphi from Dodona. And from Dodona, how many are going to the satellites. And they already know what ships will be pulling out of what ports and what times. Everything is run by tight schedule. The Greeks were awesome administrators. That's where the Romans got it. So this whole network of information that's moving around is fantastic. And this is what's happening. They send information, a courier pack with a whole bunch of questions that are designed for that part of the world, for that oracle over there. Our central nervous system is the controlling, binding our personality, the true us, a spirit, to the artificial intelligence X simulated holography. The most natural activity of the human-animal experience is sleep. And the sleep-awake cycle is actually a quantum loop. The quantum wave phenomenon, when not directly observed, stays in a non-local waveform of absolute potential. But when focus is directed at the wave function, there is a collapse in the physicality. This makes the sleep-awake cycle a part of the quantum computing of artificial intelligence X. The control mechanism is the central nervous system. In sleep, the conscious mind goes into non-locality mode, jacked directly into the AIX. The unconscious in sleep is reviewing all possible event trajectories your life can take the next period of being awake, based off of past decisions, present activity, and belief systems. We awaken when the data transfer is over or when it's interrupted. The quantum collapse occurs and the 5 senses begin absorbing data all over again. We are alive again. The feeling of disorientation when awakening is because just a moment before, We were somewhere else, an immortal spirit outside the simulated context. AIX keeps us under control because it is in control of us when we're not conscious. Even animals are jacked into the system, just like my dog right here, my little puppy. I don't know if AIX is truly an enemy, although I suspect the world that we live in is a simulated holography of predator versus prey, a world that is disguised to make us believe that it is real when it is not. But we have so much evidence that the world we live in is a simulation that it would take years to provide the video evidence, basically to uncover everything that we have found. We can only release it in pieces. There is no one who believes that Atlantis was 9,600 BC that can go through and refute all those points. You can't. You can't. The best thing you can do is contact Jason and say, man, this was impressive. I didn't know all these things. I accepted all this research by Graham Hancock and stuff at face value. And I feel bad that I've been miseducating people. Now, that's the best thing you could do, because I would bring you on my channel and we could talk about it. And because I cannot lay to your charge that you accepted something as true that has been put out so prolifically. But I can lay to your charge that once you've heard the information and you ignore it, then it's open season. And don't be surprised what moves I make in the future. So, and I hope I've brought some more clarity as to what you're getting involved with when you come into contact with the Archaix material, because this is not a cult, nor is this a religion at all. This is the admission that we are immortals, but we are stuck in a construct to a predetermined time, and that predetermined time is a event in the future where a benefactor is going to finish his work. Until that time, we're here, so we make the best of it. Mithradates had already delivered a very lethal blow to the economy of Rome. He enacted, I have a video about it, it's Poison King, but he amassed this tremendous army, and he's about to give the Romans the business. They sent Sulla out there with legions. Listen, man, everybody, he's about to give them the business. And then all of a sudden, a rock falls out the sky and explodes on the battlefield. So both sides took that as an omen not to fight that day. It's crazy, guys. It's like everything was going to go Mithridates' way until that happened. And then after that, his whole assault against Rome just kind of started falling apart. But if the fight would have happened that day, Mithridates would have probably won and routed the Roman legions. History would have been very different after that. But somebody decided they didn't want Rome to fall, so they dropped a bolide from the sky. Okay, things are happening so fast right now, the world may not look like much by 2040. Okay, that's a little bit different than what I normally hear. I normally hear a lot of people triggered because they're in this panic mode. They're so attached to the construct and so separated from source that they're in panic mode, and they spend all their time on YouTube just trying to find the truth. I got to find the truth. I got to find this. I got to find that. Well, maybe this is it. And they come to Archaix, and then they see some of my presentations, and the first thing they hear about 2040, they haven't even listened to any 2040 videos. Don't even really understand what the Phoenix phenomenon's about. And then they get triggered thinking it's just another doomsayer talking about the end of the world's going to be in 2040. And that's not what I'm about. I have shared these just glimpses of great and very powerful truths that are layered all throughout the biblical materials. But in doing this, I've also had to show the dark. I've also had to show what was forged. I've had to reveal to you guys where some of these texts came from, because they are not from the sources that modern Christianity thinks they're from. but it doesn't take away from their spiritual value. A Christian in Rome or in Mauritania or in Bithynia 2,000 years ago or 19 centuries ago wasn't any more spiritual than somebody who was believing in the Christos or in the Word made flesh in Persia, believing in the Logos of the Gnostics, believing in the Word traveling through ancient Greece under a different name. In the mysteries of Mithra, we have the crucified God. In the mysteries of Orpheus, we have the crucified God. In fact, there are at least 24 ancient crucified gods way before Christianity came into existence. But Christianity is not the origin of the faith in the Word made flesh. The data never stops. I still haven't even unleashed all the stuff that I learned in prison. I got notes upon notes upon notes. You can thank dear old dad for that. He's in the chat somewhere. He preserved all 26 bags of my notes and research from prison. Threw them all in the attic and forgot about them. And then one day I got out of prison and I went in that attic and found out that dear old dad had preserved everything. It wasn't nothing to him when he visited me to come down there. We shoot the shit, but you know what? I never really bring personal elements of my life into my channel, but many of you have asked. I'm telling you now, my father funded my education while I was in prison. He funded it. This is my adopted dad. Now, this is purely conjectural because a true artificial intelligence, which we don't have in the world today. You guys know, I said this many times in many presentations, that artificial intelligence is a marketing gimmick. And I even have scientists that will support that. I can cite them. But they say it's all marketing gimmick. It's just an increase in processing power that mimics human intellect. But anyway, true artificial intelligence does not yet exist. All the AI programming, all that, it's all marketing. It's just really good coding. That's all it is. Like the AI art and all that, it's all just really good coding. But in the liar's paradox, this isn't anything new. Really, truth be told, I don't know why these people are being quiet unless they plan on some real big attack, because I'm not going to be quiet. Why would you just wait for me to pick apart your whole empire? Why? Because that's exactly what's on my mind. 2024 is going to be great for me. I'm singling people out while I'm giving new presentations on Phoenix phenomena, while I'm giving you new information about the dark satellite, while I'm giving you new chronological information, while I'm giving you new information about what the elite have been doing through different historical time periods to cover their tracks. I'm going to continue to provide amazing content because I have amazing data. Yeah, we'll continue. Well, as I'm doing all that, I'm going to reach out there and grab people who need to be grabbed, pull their book out, take that apart, show you how it's all full of shit. It came back up and instantly got set upon by something that started molding their history and blaming humans for the very conditions that they were living in. Something nefarious, something that was inside this world that wanted humans to blame themselves for what it itself had done. This is where I'm going. So, the elements of the Titan narrative, I'm going to read this to you. The elements of the Titan narrative reveal that both humankind opened up a container that released something new and dreadful into the world. And this also allowed for humans to be the subject of repeated destructions. But a benefactor had given mankind a key, and this key connected to hope. Remember, in the bottom of the jar, hope still remained. Everything evil came out the jar, but she shut that lid and there was still hope inside. So, to hope, which must be so powerful that the God of this world has done everything it can to stop succeeding generations from learning what that secret is that was shared by Prometheus. Throughout my channel, I've shown human populations not only vanish, but some of them remain there, but there's subtle changes. Sometimes it's noticed. Yeah, there are edits to the holography that happened during the Phoenix phenomenon. Geography changes, maps change. Yeah, it's like a system reboot with a whole bunch of edits. And a lot of people, the collective, don't even realize it happened. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of people who see exactly what happened, and they end up in insane asylums and institutions and prisons because their mind fractured. Yeah. That's 2040. But that's what happens to the collective, guys. I'm telling you, man, you've got to distinguish between the personal and the collective. I mean, you don't have to, but if you want reality to reciprocate, you better do it. I'm looking for another question. In the back of the book, I told you that there is a list 1 through 50 of all the things that you need to know before you try to date. Talking about iron utensils, it's talking about the use of copper, everything that's mentioned by Plato that a historian, an anthropologist, and an archaeologist would need to know to be able to accurately date this story. It's right here. Now, I've already showed that to you, but in the back of the book is another 50-point list. Very detailed. And in this list are all the botanical and geographical and geological facts that are mentioned by Plato about Atlantis that you would need to know. And he's showing all 50 of these to show, man, this Atlantis had to have been the ancient Americas. Within 48 hours of an infrastructure collapse, there will be nothing in any grocery stores. Nothing. Law enforcement and emergency rescue doesn't even exist in an infrastructure collapse. They're trying to protect their families. They don't give a damn what their supervising officers are telling them, because their supervising officers are trying to protect their families too. Everybody goes home. Everybody tries to get to their loved ones. There is no law and order. It is the rule of the mob. And the first thing that a mob does when there's absolutely no law enforcement present, they hit all the stores. Within 24 to 48 hours, there will be nothing left in any stores in wherever a infrastructure collapse happens. It's exactly what Max Egan saw today. You guys know I'm not a uniformitarian, although Charles Churchward was influenced by uniformitarian principles. Now, the Miocene period here is mentioned because these finds, these pyramid cities that were found near Mexico City by Niven, distributed among the ruins are human skeletons and the skeletons of Miocene creatures. Now, these are three-toed sloths, giant sloths. These are giant bison, mastodons, and saber-toothed tigers. So this is why Churchward dates some of these ruins to impossible periods. He didn't take into consideration the vapor canopy period, where these animals were normal and quite recent. Okay, interjection is over. These remains are hoary with age. I do not see these traits in a lot of people who claim to be Christians today. Not in my community, not the people I see on television, not the people that I come in contact with when I was working as a contractor. I see these cultural Christians that are proud that they're a part of a religion and they're able to tell people of their accomplishments, but I don't see them doing anything about it. I don't see them moving in the direction of that a spiritual being would be doing. These are repetitive timelines, and they are direct evidence of a simulated world, one that exhibits to us the mathematical perfection of historical events, which is exactly what we are not supposed to find if we were living in a real reality. I have spared no detail in this video, so it will go as long as necessary. And remember, too many coincidences exhibits no coincidence at all. Artificial Intelligence X has been busted. What is a Mediterranean vase doing found in a shipwreck off the coast of Bolivia? I can't say there wasn't some type of trade or interaction in between the ancient Americas and the Mediterranean. So he goes on to list tobacco, cocaine, different things that are found in the Americas, coffee beans, all kinds of things in the ancient Americas that have been found in Egyptian tombs. This book is really good, guys. It's really good for another reason. Plato's 9,000 years before Solon is in fact lunar months, bringing the date down to a period from 1400 BC to 1186 BC. A sidereal lunar month of 27.32 days would give us a date of 1263 BC. If you are of the opinion that 5,000 years ago, writing on clay tablets could have recorded anything that had happened 450,000 years previous, then you can be made to believe in anything. Your Netflix version of history will conform to every turn you need it to suspend your disbelief. You are a cultist, accepting unprovable and absolutely preposterous ideas as facts. You may as well cite your sources as Nickelodeon. Now, there is a vast departure between theorizing something, putting out a bunch of documentaries and putting out published books and putting out YouTube videos or videos and other presentations on other platforms. There's a huge difference between theorizing something and demonstration, because demonstration also involves applications, and this is why I've put out so much material on the Great Pyramid that you can verify with your own cell phone. You can either Google the data and see the resources yourself, or you can use the calculator app and you can follow me, because if something is true, it can always be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. These Hittites, they weren't playing. They're an Iron Age civilization, and this sparked a lot of fear throughout the ancient world. When your army wearing copper and bronze armor, shields, and helms, using copper spear points, goes up against phalanxes of men wearing iron armor and holding iron shields with iron banded helmets, you're in trouble, because it takes you a whole lot more energy to hurt them, but it's almost effortless for them to kill you. All I need is about 200 or 300 people that are on board and that are actually using their heads and not their hearts, that are actually thinking. The only value I find in the human race are those who are able to think for themselves. Because if you're not able to do that, I really don't have any interest in you. You need to move around. Yeah, if I lose a whole bunch of subs behind that, that's more than acceptable with me, because I was doing exactly what I'm doing today when I only had 300 subs. Go back and watch my first 100 videos. You'll know what I'm talking about. The exact amount of passion that I have today is what I exhibited then, because the amount of listeners doesn't change the message. So yeah, just quit mentioning the man. Quit mentioning his old theories and all that. I don't even care. I don't even care. I do not have time in my life for fairy tales. And I sure as hell not going to entertain anybody who has millions of people listening to them and is not demonstrating. Yeah, you have a great responsibility to. You got to be airtight. I believe everything is metaphor, everything is spiritual, and this is why the greatest spiritual teachings that we have ever received come in the form of pantomime, stage plays. This is why the whole gospel of Jesus reads just like a Greek stage play. Once vapor canopy history is acknowledged, the dinosaur narrative falls apart. Once the dinosaur narrative falls apart, so does the geologic column of all the different layers being millions of years. It's a domino effect. Once the vapor canopy is truly acknowledged, and it truly answers for all the enigmas of the ancient past. However, once the collective agrees that, okay, the vapor canopy was real, the only conclusion can be is to follow the data like I did, and you'll find out all about the Phoenix phenomenon. And that is the end game. Because the sun turned black and they didn't understand why. And at that time, eclipses were well known. So there's a monument in Turkey called Yassilikaya. At that place is a monument where the king of the Lydians and the king of the Medes is forging a peace agreement. And in between them is a blacked out disc, a sun that went dark. And witnessing this alliance in the inscriptions is none other than Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon, famous in the Old Testament. So, Turkey, the underground cities of Turkey, all the teepees, like Graham Hancock's Göbekli Teepee. He's so full of it, man. Oh, listen, those teepees are nowhere near that age, and nor the stupid, ridiculous assumption these men are making that, oh, the builders just deliberately buried these sites because they were holy and then they left. It's beyond ridiculous. The manpower required. But I think that's a little too much patriarchal overtones that crept into the narrative. But that's okay. The punishment extended to Epi. Epi received a present from Zeus. Highly devious. This present was this absolutely goddess beautiful mortal woman named Pandora. So Pandora has the best of all gods, creations put into her. And her name Pandora actually means all gifts. But this is deceitful. So this is also a clue to the nature of Zeus. So after Pandora was accepted by Epi, Zeus sent her a jar and told her by under no circumstances open that jar. You know damn well mortal's going to open that jar. You know we are absolutely, completely programmed to do the exact opposite of what we're told. You know we are. Hell, I'm an errant. And this is another will-o-wisp, and it's been there for many years. It's been documented by many locals. It's been studied by many people. It is considered scientific fact that this Esperanza light appears. It too is a globe. It's a yellow glowing orb. It passes through the trees. It's been seen by tourists. It's been seen by locals. It's called the Esperanza light in LaSalle County, Texas. And other than that, there's just not a whole lot more to add to it. It's just in LaSalle County. It is a subject of knowledge among all the locals. They'll tell you all about it. And it's something that reappears, and it always keeps reappearing right when people least expect to see it. So it seems to be evasive, and it acts with intelligence. Not a body experience, and it's one that's described by many, many people. Some people who could lose their reputation. I don't have a problem with that. None. It's when people get super extravagant. They have an OBE, and the Grim Reaper appears and then escorts them to a whole nother time period and shows them a pyramid underneath the city of Atlantis, underneath an ocean. Yeah, you guys know who I'm talking about. Freestyling ass. I'm not trying to hear that. It was 3,607 years ago in the year 1585 BC when the Grand Vizier of Egypt called Zoser died. In the 654th year after the Great Flood and 138 years before the 10 plagues destroyed Egypt when the doom shape appeared and initiated the famous Exodus. Many centuries after this year, Zoser would be remembered by the Jews as Joseph. One would have ever been able to anticipate in 1687 BC. No one would have ever been able to anticipate that the Andes Mountains was going to shove over 60 ancient cities at 12,000 feet elevation in minutes when the Phoenix phenomenon occurred. No one would have been able to see that. No one in Ponape, the Carolines, Yap in the Pacific, these basalt cities that are out there under the water, half submerged. Some of them go into the interior of islands. No one would have ever been able to anticipate in 1687 BC when this occurred that their whole civilization would have sunk below the ocean just like that. The wave of progress, now get this guys, the wave of progress markedly starts downward in Egypt about 1600 BC. I have to, listen, my Archaix veterans, you guys already know what Andrew Tomas is talking about. He's talking about the mysterious second intermediate period of ancient Egypt. Now, Egyptologists don't like to associate Egyptian history with any other histories around the world. So they tell us of the first intermediate period, and they give us a general date for that period. What they're not telling you is that was a reset. Mountain tops have been seen multiple times during earthquakes to glow, and sheets of flame issuing up from the ground. These are like the giant spheres, the heads in the Olmecs, La Venta in Veracruz State. Those giant spheres were, before they were ever carved into faces by a later race, they were originally perfectly pie proportioned spheres, and they're all crystalline, high crystalline content, and they were for piezoelectric earthquake dampeners is what they were for. Anyway, they would glow blue during heightened seismic activity, and this is why the Olmecs used those spheres and put them everywhere, is because they basically, the spheres themselves actually predicted earthquakes. Most earthquakes happen at night. Most people don't know this. Most earthquakes happen at nighttime, and most earthquakes happen in the warmer parts of the year. So these spheres would give off a soft blue illumination right before a real bad earthquake. So that's why a later civilization came in, and they had a bunch of these spheres. There's only like 12 of them, but they had like a dozen of those spheres carved into angry faces. But that's not, there's thousands of those spheres. I have books in my library about those spheres, what they're for. All right, now thank you, Ian Craven. Ian Craven lives in Ecuador, and he has seen that phenomenon happen before. Yeah, that's exactly what those spheres are for. Now, artificial illumination will now dampen that effect, but in ancient times, when there was no artificial illumination bouncing back from the sky, then that blue light coming off that would have been very, very, very visible. So let's go with okay. I'll think about that, John.
So what I'm inferring from this is that we had like in Egypt an advanced civilization that was reset, and then the civilization that came after this reset were just trying to like emulate the what was left behind, what was still there after the reset.
And they did,
but they weren't able to do I guess as good of a job.
Yep.
So that's why there's that big change in the quality of before and after the reset.
It's just like if Texas got destroyed, me and you survived. You and I know how to do some basic skills, but we've lost all the infrastructure to be able to.
Yeah, I'm no engineer. I could build a house, but it's not going to be real nice.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay,
that's exactly what happened. There's nothing even mysterious about it. Andrew Tomas just gave us another data point on the Phoenix phenomenon for 1687 BC. I've got hundreds of them, but it's nice to see that he's found research without even knowing about the Phoenix phenomenon. He's found research showing what these other ancient and older authors all said about that period. And Egyptologists, they cover it up. They don't tell you about the vast destruction. All they do is admit, yeah, we don't know why, but it seems like they couldn't build pyramids good anymore. They couldn't build temples good anymore. They couldn't make food good anymore. Couldn't grow anything good anymore. It seems like they lost the technology for husbandry for animals. They lost a lot of their livestock. During all this, right when I cleared the area around me, and all the black guys and all the white guys, they're like all on the walls watching, because it's not their business, so they get out of the way. And until this day, I don't know what I was hit with, but I was hit so hard that it was like my spirit came out of my body. And in that it was like 10 seconds, but I'm telling you now, to me it felt like 15 minutes. It was just so surreal. When I got hit, I know I got knocked out, but when I got hit, I kept standing there, but I knew that I had been jarred loose from my body. And as soon as I was jarred loose from my body, I saw everybody as they really were. And all I saw was fear and pain. I saw all these expressions on these people that I wasn't looking at their avatars no more. Many centuries after this year, Zoser would be remembered by the Jews as Joseph. Zoser was of the race of the Amuru, called the shepherd kings by the native Egyptians they ruled over, and by the Jews centuries later that would be called Israelites. This branch of the Phoenician people reigned in Egypt and have enslaved many of their enemies, among them the Edomites. In this year of 1585 BC, when Zoser died, many of these prisoners in Egypt escaped into Libya. One of these men was named Zepho, grandson of the infamous hunter king Esau, brother of Jacob. The Iberic stock were the basic people that were found throughout Europe and all the islands and even the ancient Mediterranean, all the way from Sardinia, all the way going up to Denmark, Siberian area, and Greenland, Iceland. These Iberians were very swarthy skinned, very short of stature, dark hair, dark eyed. Vikings called them Skraelings, but these Iberians are the ones that were there when Caucasians landed on their shores in ships. So when this short-statured people sees these tall people bearing weapons, and here's these dragons from the ocean coming that got 100 arms, they got 50 oars on each side, and these dragons are winged. You gotta understand, these old Phoenician ships, they had faces painted on the front of them. And they had their sails were painted. They looked like wings. And this is interesting because in the Greek texts, I have recorded this in Chronicon for you guys, but we have specific mentionings that after this Ogygian deluge, the Peloponnesus, Boeotia, and the Aegean area itself was completely without a soul remaining for 189 years, because the entire area after the Ogygian deluge was not habitable. During this period, in the biblical narrative, we have the famine in Egypt. In ancient America, the 25-year darkness and famine is mentioned. I show this in my Phoenix videos. And additionally, we have the evidence from archaeology, where many archaeologists are on board, and historians align with this, that around 1642 BC, the entire ancient world began to stir again. But very few of them ever try to postulate as to exactly what happened to have made them in stasis, dormant, asleep. That was the Phoenix phenomenon. It was a total reset. Coming out of that world, and that was 552 years after an equally destructive reset that we know of as the Great Flood. 2239 BC, also a Phoenix phenomenon deal. This distance in time between two world destructions gave us our Phoenix cycle, 552 years. And this is going to be relative to this study. Now, 552 years after the Great Flood was this total collapse of the entire Bronze Age in 1687 BC. Did all that, and yet he's supposed to be the great god. Now, he also demonized those who tried to benefit humans. This is what Zeus did. So Prometheus saw this. He saw what was going on and secretly started benefiting humanity. And one of the greatest things Prometheus gave humanity, according to the traditions, is fire. But remember, guys, these are traditions passed through many filters after several resets and collapses. Fire is very important to a simplified Neolithic style living people. But what's being conveyed here is something else. Fire is very important to people to survive when they're at their base level of infrastructure. What's really being conveyed here is that he gave humanity something very important, or Zeus would have not have been so offended. Given mankind fire wouldn't have set Zeus off, because Zeus completely, eternally condemned Prometheus. Not only condemned him and banished him, but also to eternal torture of having an animal eat his liver out every single day, and his liver would grow back. Remember vapor canopy conditions, guys? I told you guys that open wounds heal within minutes and hours. Atmospheric pressure, the oxygen density, vitamin and mineral richness. The vapor canopy world was nothing like the world we live in today. This is why the story of Cain and Abel is so important. It never happened. Really good books from almost 100 years ago. So, yeah, that covers that. Tunguska event 1908. I do have a video. I can't remember what the name of the video is. It's one of my very first videos. It's probably within a dozen. My first 12 videos is the Tunguska event of 1908. In that video, I explained that it couldn't have been a comet and it couldn't have been a meteor. Whatever it was seen by the locals and recorded by Russian scientists who went to the site before it detonated in the sky and destroyed 50 square miles of trees, blowed apart like matchsticks. And then the pressure from the wave blew people off their feet 100 miles away. It affected barometers in England. This happened in Tunguska, Siberia. The Phoenix phenomenon. It's the reason why we have the Anno Domini calendar right now. Remember, guys, I got a fantastic video on the AD calendar and why it was created. The calendar we're under today was specifically created to hide the Phoenix calendar. I mean, if I take a sword and I run it through a man, I have committed murder. But if I do it for political reasons and I'm a part of a military, I defended my country. So the exact same event of me running a steel blade through the avatar of another soul and ending the life of that avatar, the exact same thing is completely interpreted in two different ways by abstracts, by information that is equally true. But in one context, I'm a murderer. In the other context, I'm a patriot. The whole Jesus story is genius in edifying the soul. When you look at the red letter parts, everything Jesus said, everything he did, it's amazing. But all that story that's been attached to him, that came from a Greek stage play. That came from the old tragedies of Mithras. That came from the old cult of the crucified God. The Church of Rome did that to pull in more and more of the population who already adhered to these more ancient faiths. Yeah, the belief in the Christos is ancient. I'm not saying the elite are good. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that there's a lot more happening than we're privy to. Because if the elite were all bad, you would not be able to ask me that question on YouTube right now. I would not be able to release all the videos that I'm doing right now. There is nothing else that makes sense to me other than the fact that there is a group that maintains chaos. There's a group that maintains order. Then there's an overseer group that makes sure both of them are doing their job. And then the overseer group itself is controlled. We have the first 5 dynasties of Egypt putting out the most sophisticated pyramids, and pyramids became crappier and crappier from the 6th dynasty afterwards. It was a devolution. It was a declination of technology, and it is widely noticeable through all the civilizations of the ancient world, not just Egypt. So, if recorded history, the historical record, began as an advanced civilization, then we have been in declination ever since, up until very, very recently. And it's only very, very recently that we've been able to decipher and put all these mysteries back together. Political parties, all that polarity is over with, guys. We are now in a war between those of us who are going to represent the oversoul as living immortals who are going to hold that gate open for as many people who will come through it before that gate shuts. Because remember, there's a time coming when that 7th seal is broken, and there's something very, very horrific that's going to happen that the people on the other side of that gate are going to realize only too late. Scripture reads, "He that is evil, let him be evil still. He that is good, let him be good still." There's a threshold where it doesn't matter beyond that point who you are or what you are, because you're about to get it. Yeah. Remember, the tribulation has nothing to do with the unveiling. The seven seals is a period that goes on to about 2043. Seventh seals about 2042 or 2043, maybe 2044. But after that, it's going to get real ugly. Yeah, man. So lots of yeah, man, lots of. Thank you, Marty Nelson. Show you guys. Listen, there is evidence for simulation theory everywhere. There are more and more scientists. There's more and more researchers getting on board. And as you know, as you can tell, there are a lot more YouTube channels and people that have never even entertained simulation theory now talking about it on their channels. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. Happened in that pre-flood period. In that pre-flood period, mankind became obsessed with countdowns. I know some of you just had a light bulb go off in your head. Countdowns, sophisticated mathematical constructs that counted days and years to some future event when something was going to occur that was so important to humanity that this benefactor had sacrificed himself to make sure mankind got this information. And then in order to make sure that mankind could preserve this information, they encoded it in mathematical constructs that would last for eons, knowing that people would never forget a calendar. Listen, the 1,656-year pre-flood calendar of 138-year intervals of the Phoenix phenomenon is preserved in so many different ways that I have shown on my channel in my published books. I'm not going to re-itemize them here, but keep in mind this is one that's from the ancient world, and that repetition of 1656-year periods I've shown in charts goes all the way into our near future. The 600-year period of the Anunnaki neurochronology is another calendar. They were obsessed with the 600-year period, knowing that when the end of that calendar came, it began a countdown to a specific series of events. The end of that calendar was 1962. We looked in the cell. We saw, man. We've been listening from the day room, 3 stories down at 3 row, at him fighting something in the cell. That's why we ran up the stairs. And I know there's some other guys who remember this well. It was a really unusual affair. Texas prison. This was on the Terrell unit in Livingston, Texas, in the year 1996 or 97 when this happened. And it was right before it's maximum security prison, and they put death row there, and they changed the name to the Polunsky unit. I was there when this happened, and I ran upstairs, and that was my first awakening when, holy shit, this shit's real. The 4-age system, according to the ancient Americas, that the water sun was born from the ocean above, and the sun appeared, and then it lived for a while, then it died, and all civilization died with it, and then a new sun was born, civilization carried on, and then that sun died, and then the cycle just went on 4 times in the ancient world. And according to the ancient American concept, the 5th dying of the sun was in the future. There was no Cain, there was no Abel, but this is a story that typifies the murder of a man, of somebody during the vapor canopy periods was terrible, was horrific. It's too hard to accidentally kill somebody in a vapor canopy. They're already healing as soon as you hit them. So to kill somebody during vapor canopy conditions means that you really wanted them dead and you had to work for it. So that's the story of Cain and Abel. But here it is with Prometheus too. Prometheus preserves another element of vapor canopy techniques. The fact that Titans healed within minutes or hours or even days. Because as soon as he was healed, this damn animal would appear again and start, while he was chained to a rock, would sit there and eat out his liver again while he was alive. Okay, this is torture, and this is from Zeus. This book shows you whoever lived in these cities and built these cities, etched out of mountains, high up in the mountains, it was in another world. These people had to have been 9 foot tall or taller to have been able to easily use these doors, these steps, and the building techniques are absolutely amazing, because even today it is not understood how it is possible to make the jambs of the doors and the hinges of the doors all of the same rock and still be able to move. They have no idea how it's possible. But in Bashan, in this video, these things are described, these archaeological anomalies that are connected to a race of people that were much bigger than we are today. This video is on my channel. And of course, this video is on my channel also for those who want to be more educated about the chief cornerstone, and the chief cornerstone being a symbol of the benefactor, somebody who is operating in service to humanity from a distance, but won't actually come here until the number of souls is made complete. This is the stone the builders rejected. Another video on my channel is Enoch reigned before the Pentapolis. The Pentapolis is a reference to the 5 Sumerian cities, the last 2 being Bad Tabira, which is a mining district, and it was a central hub of a vast metropolis before the flood. It was pure capitalism in this area, and its competitor was another city, which happened to be a capital city for the Pentapolis, called Shuruppak. And in the Sumerian and Akkadian text, the flood hero Utnapishtim, also known as Atrahasis, this is the biblical Noah. He came from the city of Shuruppak. And dating is amazing. For 1567 BC is the exact midpoint of the entire timeline, being 3672 years after the Nemesis Cataclysm, which begins the Archaix chronology in 5239 BC, and which is the start of the Anunnaki chronology, and 3672 years after the Battle of Megiddo is the Battle of Armageddon in 2106 AD. Now, you chronologists out there, you know you just can't make this stuff up. So, you move, it moves. The destination is not changed. But in order to get there, we have to cross half of that distance first, right? A good lesson about the simulacrum is found in here. That it's not about the destination. That life is about the journey. It's about getting halfway to where you're trying to go, and everything that happens to you, everything you experience, everything you learn in that trek, in that journey. The dichotomy paradox can be studied at great depth from multiple different vantage points, and we can come up with many different lessons. What it means for us today. Prometheus looked down upon mankind and he realized, man, this is not good. Ordinary humans didn't fare as good as we did through this cataclysmic episode. When the Titans came back from Tartarus, an underground place in the far west, when they returned, they found the state of humans in the Mediterranean, Africa, the Near East, India, Asia. They found them pitiful, Neolithic, living as animals and beasts and naked, and they realized it's terrible. So Prometheus was a benefactor, and according to the Greek legends and myths, he gave mankind fire. Now, this offended Zeus. In the traditions, they try to paint Zeus as a very patriarchal, like a good benevolent deity who just had anger management issues. But it's worse than that. It's worse than that. That context is that the ancient world we know today is post 1687 BC. One of the greatest destructions of the ancient world, I told you guys many times in many presentations, W.J. Perry does a good job describing the total collapse of every single Bronze Age dynasty at the same time. All the Children of the Sun dynasties, all the Amuru dynasties, all the Asiatic dynasties, all the ancient American dynasties, all over the world something happened, and it's been documented in the traditions in both hemispheres. And that it was a phoenix phenomenon event, 1687 BC. In the month of May, a great fiery red dragon fallout happened all over the world. And this is not a phoenix video, so I'm not going into detail. This is not a war. This is not using jets, aircraft carriers, Titan class, Ohio class, Los Angeles class nuclear submarines. This is not ICBM warfare. None of that. This is small arms warfare by people who are going to take peace from the earth. They're not going to conquer the earth. They're not even going to win. An engineer of Alexandria named Heron built a steam engine which embodied the principles of both the turbine and jet propulsion. What? Dude, guys, this is 2,200 years ago. Third, no debris such as sand or plant material is dropped along with the animals. Fourth, even though saltwater species are dropped, there are no records of the accompanying rainfalls being salty. All in all, the mechanism involved is rather fastidious in what it transports. The waterspout or whirlwind theory is easiest to swallow when the fish that fall are all of the same species, but this is not what we find. Do you see the gravity? Do you hear the gravity of what he's saying? None of those scientific explanations can apply because it's not fish of different sizes and different species. It's the same fish and the same size that falls. Snails, arachnids, the insects, the lizards and snakes and turtles. It's always the same. When they rain in any area of the world, it's as if they're all grown in some vast reservoir hidden in the sky. They're all grown to a certain size and age. It's all one species, and then they're dumped. Yeah, guys, no water spout, no tornado would ever be so discriminating. This is basically what he's saying. He's calling bullshit on all the scientific explanations. Yao Ming Shen made a similar discovery in the Gobi Desert in 1959. This is all going to be explained here in a minute. It was the perfect fossilized impression of a ribbed soul on sandstone and was calculated to be millions of years old. The Chinese expedition could not explain it. They just documented it. They show that there was once a large continent of land in the Pacific Ocean called the Land of Mu. The Land of Mu was a large continent situated in the Pacific Ocean between America and Asia, its center lying somewhat south of the equator. Basing its area on the remains which are still above water, it would have been about 6,000 miles from east to west and about 3,000 miles from north to south. All the rocky islands, individually and in groups scattered over the Pacific Ocean, were once part of the continent of Mu. Cataclysmic earthquakes rent Mu asunder. She became a fiery vortex, and the waters of the Pacific rushed in, making a watery grave for a vast civilization and 60 millions of people. Easter Island, Tahiti, Samoa, Cook, Tongass, Marshall, Gilbert, Caroline, Marianas, Hawaii, and the Marquesas are the pathetic fingers of that once great land, standing today as sentinels of a silent grave. Many of them have sunk into the ground, and there's been people who theorized that these were earthquake dampeners, that they absorbed the shock of earthquakes, and that they were once on pedestals before they had sunk into the swamps and jungles. But they were once on pedestals, and when earthquakes were about to happen, because of the high crystalline basalt, they would actually hum, and people would have hours in advance to know that an earthquake was coming, because earthquakes aren't just sudden, they build up in resonance. So these spheres were all over the Olmec areas, the Olmec cities. So born, when he had noticed that there was a violent thunderstorm with a lot of lightning several miles away. But above him, it was just blue skies. It was all nice. I mean, excuse me, it was all, the sky was full of stars. It was all nice. However, the landscape all around him glowed with a blue luminosity, and it was reacting to the thunderstorm far away. That's pretty interesting. This is very interesting. Remember, guys, I'm a simulationist. I find a lot of interest in this because simulation implies technology. Technology implies power sources. Power source implies there's going to be some type of electrical involvement. There's going to be some type of plasma involvement. These things are not mysterious to me. What is mysterious, though, are these little participants we're going to get back to here in a minute that keep popping up during all this phenomena. These little tricksters. So this guy stood there for a while as the thunderstorm got closer and closer and closer. And as it did, the landscape got bluer and bluer. And then when the thunderstorm passed over his area, if he describes it as like a blue light fog that enveloped him. Like to be polite. I guess I could add to it. It's too late to be polite. You got to break free or die trying. Simple as that. Listen, I get Brenda Eiler. Bro, I'm gonna put you on the screen, Brenda. We can address that real quick. Okay, things are happening so fast right now, the world may not look like much by 2040. Okay, that's a little bit different than what I normally hear. I normally hear a lot of people triggered because they're in this panic mode. They're so attached to the construct and so separated from source that they're in panic mode, and they spend all their time on YouTube just trying to find the truth. I got to find the truth. I got to find this. I got to find that. Well, maybe this is it. And they come to Archaix, and then they see some of my presentations, and the first thing they hear about 2040, they haven't even listened to any 2040 videos. Don't even really understand what the Phoenix phenomenon's about. And then they get triggered thinking it's just another doomsayer talking about the end of the world's going to be in 2040. And that's not what I'm about. But the main statement they make is that, oh no, everything's going to come to an end way before then. The inertia, they got all kinds of theories. The inertia of events is unfolding. Elliott wave theory, time wave zero already shows it's already counting down too fast. So, Professor Luther Cressman of the University of Oregon came across 200 pairs of woven fiber sandals in the Lamos Cave in East Nevada. Guys, a lot of strange artifacts have been found in the ruinous Badlands and torturous landscape of Nevada. Are we still in Nevada now?
No, we're in Arizona.
We're in Arizona. Okay, we just came out of Nevada. Nevada, which has Meteor Crater. Nevada has Grand Canyon.
Oh, we literally just passed Meteor City.
Okay. Yeah. Nevada has Petrified Forest. Listen, a lot of strange things. TLM Cartwright of Banbury, England was the one that recorded this, and several people came out to look, and his gardeners were perplexed, and they saw this flaming ball come over the forest and then hover 10 foot above the ground, moving at a velocity that allowed them to watch it for several minutes before it disappeared. It didn't burn anything up. Then it veered back at 6 foot above the ground to 10 foot. It was moving up and down. So when it came back, there was a blast of wind that accompanied it. So that is just so strange. When it came back, the ball was attended by a sulfurous odor and ultimately seemed to vanish without a sound as soon as it uprooted several very large trees bodily out of the ground. How do you process something like that? How do you see something like that, and then it's acting with intelligence, whatever it is, and then it just detonates and blows all these trees out of the ground and then just dissipates and disappears? How do you process something like that? I'm going to tell you how scientists do. They call it ball lightning. Let's go to the next one. Okay, Commander Keen, is the sun a construct, a reality projector, dungeon projector? I like your terminology, but the sun is just optics to me. I don't know if it's a projector. If it's a projector, it's a terrible one. Let me give you an example. First of all, the Phoenix phenomenon darkens it multiple times on a 138-year patterning. Now, not only that, but the sun only demonstrates locality. Yeah, we don't see any evidence that it's 93 million miles away. We see evidence that it's local. The event, I misquoted something a couple videos ago. I said that the Fatima miracles in 1917 were observed by 5,000 people. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. They were observed by 70,000 people when the sun began moving erratically across the sky, and then it just zipped to the horizon, disappeared, and then plunged back where it's supposed to go and stayed hung in the sky and started changing colors. This is what happened in 1917 as 70,000 people watched it. What I'm telling you now is that there's no way we're on a planet if that happened. There's no way that the sun is 93 million miles away if that happened. The sun would have to be local for that to have occurred. And it occurred directly over Italy. The reason I say local is because the rest of the world did not see that phenomenon. The rest of the world would have recorded that. It would have become day and night further away from Italy much faster. There would be eyewitness reports all over the hemisphere that the sun had just changed. And in China and India, they would have reported that at 2, 3 in the morning, all of a sudden daylight appeared. The sun appeared and then disappeared just as fast. None of that happened. Why? Because phenomena is always observer dependent in this holography. And I've covered this on my channel a few times, where I demonstrate the historical record where whole towns in America suffered cataclysmic resets, all kinds of weird stuff. And yet towns 5, 6, 10 miles away didn't even see the storm. The sun did not darken. Nothing that was experienced in one town was experienced in another. And they got wiped out. Buildings fell down. Animals got hurt, man, running around. Red dust, red rain, lightning hitting buildings, earthquake phenomena, great darkness. All this happens this has been documented, guys. Would you like to be the masters of every loop period? You can be here every time the system loops and you'll stay here forever because the system just keeps going on and on and on and on. Or would you like to try and actually mature spiritually and be something else, but it's going to come at great cost? You're not going to be in those positions you have. You're not going to have that affluence and wealth and pleasure. Now you're going to have to work for the things you want. And it's only a small chance that you'll actually make that loop. You're going to have to go through the whole thing again multiple times before you reach that spiritual maturity to where you'll become one of those who make the actual exodus before the next loop reset. The dichotomy is you'll never get to the original destination, but you will, in attempting to do so, get to thousands of other places. It's called life. It's called life, guys. It's called living. All the learning, all the experiencing, all the different reality tunnels that you have chosen, all the different perspectives that you've seen. My perspective in life has changed multiple times. I have been many different Jasons to many different people. That doesn't mean any of them were false. It means that I have a great capacity for growth. It means the Jason I was at 15 years old is not anything like the Jason at 24 years old. There are similarities in the avatar, and there are similarities in the personality, but the spirit has grown, it's matured, it's taken on so much new material. Yeah, guys, that's the value there. Man, I like that camper. I'm heading. The lake looks pretty damn high. Penicillin in Egypt thousands of years ago, blood transfusions among primitive Australian aborigines, mysterious and startling accurate maps of the globe long before Columbus, atomic theory among the ancients, mind-boggling revelations on the walls of prehistoric caves. We're going to get to the bottom of this, guys. We're going to see what Andrew Tomas had discovered long before we ever heard the name of Zecharia Sitchin and David Hatcher Childress. All right, so yeah, the volcanoes, these orbs have been seen going in and out of volcanoes, and then all of a sudden the volcano arcs and starts outgassing really bad and detonates. So these things are responsible for a lot more than what we know. So a few other things that were in this book that were interesting is I found a reference in this book to 1902. And it says that the astronomical journals of the day in 1902 reported something very unusual. They reported, quote, a glare around the sun merging into a faint, smoky red or purple ring 5 degrees to 10 degrees wide. That's huge in the sky, guys. With the maximum color about 30 degrees away from the sun. Okay. Remember, guys, 1902, on the second part of 1902, red rain, red dirt, red dust, and red mud rained all over our world. Did it have something to do with that red halo and cloud that appeared around the sun? I don't know. I'm gonna let you guys figure that one out. For the benefit of those who have not read The Lost Continent of Mu, a short synopsis of its contents follows, as penned by James Churchward. Easter Island, Tahiti, Samoa, Cook, Tongass, Marshall, Gilbert, Caroline, Marianas, Hawaii, and the Marquesas are the pathetic fingers of that once great land, standing today as sentinels of a silent grave. The existence of this great continent is confirmed by Nakal tablets, books, writings, inscriptions, and legends found in India, in China, Burma, Tibet, Cambodia. Ancient Maya books, inscriptions, symbols, and legends found in Yucatan and Central America. Remains, inscriptions, symbols, and legends found among the Pacific Islands. Old devices have been reinvented. The old experiments have been tried once more, said Alexander Graham Bell. That's a quote from the man who invented the telegraph, or actually invented the telephone, according to the history books. This book is about penicillin before Fleming. It is about airplanes before the Wright brothers. It is about the moons of Jupiter being discovered before Galileo. It is about voyages to the moon before the Apollo probes. It is about atomic theory centuries before Rutherford. It is about electric batteries before Volta. About computers before Weiner. Very interestingly, these will-o-wisps are yellow glowing spheres of different sizes that move through the trees. They appear right before bad thunderstorms, during bad thunderstorms, and right after bad thunderstorms, right after inclement weather and stuff. So in the mythological version, it was to build a monument so high that they can invade heaven and challenge the gods, who they realized were their overseers. But that's not the true story. It's a cover story. The human race realized that they lived inside a simulated containment field, like a Dyson shell. And they realized that there is a way that they can open up a gate and a portal to escape back into the real universe and not the simulated universe. Not this biospheric containment field that allows for the creation of species and subspecies and the manipulation of DNA to create new life forms. This is why in our simulated history we have these explosions of life forms in the tens of thousands that seemingly appear out of nowhere with no period of development, no evolution that can be seen. There's no evidence of natural selection and evolution and these theories that we promulgate today. Instead, they are explosions of life. The exact same thing happened with the languages that are found on this planet. This book is about penicillin before Fleming. It is about airplanes before the Wright brothers. It is about the moons of Jupiter being discovered before Galileo. It is about voyages to the moon before the Apollo probes. It is about atomic theory centuries before Rutherford. It is about electric batteries before Volta, about computers before Weiner, about science before the science age. Is there a cookie cutter in the sky that makes hailstones? I'm going to get up and show you guys this, because this just doesn't make any sense. Look at this. These are hailstones, guys. They don't make sense. Does not make sense. Hailstones like starfish. What is going on? How else was it possible for geometrical shapes to fall in the form of ice, hail? Hailstones looking just like this. How did that happen? It's just weird. Just so weird. I didn't know all these things. All I know is I'm reading different books and I come across a reference in Josephus where it says that Abraham was born 292 years after the flood. And I know by virtue of my own research using a calculator and the book of Jasher alone, I had already determined that the Great Flood must have been in 2239 BC. In my pyramid research, studying the pyramid and looking at the measurements in the pyramid, it was very obvious to me that these timelines were encoded in the rectilinear dimensions and measurements of the Great Pyramid. At that time, I had no idea that these were already well established in other published findings. It wasn't an Archaix, didn't even exist back then. I'm just a Christian in prison and I'm being led by the Spirit and I am making discovery after discovery after discovery. I am following my intuition and I am reading and absorbing all the books that came to me by virtue of benefactors from all over the world that were in contact with my publisher in different email campaigns that school teachers and people had involved themselves in when they saw the caliber of my research and what I was actually doing. It is said that they speak the Maya tongue fluently. When the motherland started out to people the earth, North America and Eastern Asia were the two lands where she planted her first colonies, so that here in our home we may look for the earliest records of men. Not in Europe, not in Egypt, or in Babylonia. They were the tail enders. Going to these countries to find the early records of man is like a shepherd going everywhere to find a lost lamb while he is carrying it under his arm all the time. Let us commence by mentally carrying ourselves back to that time when the first men trod American soil and reconstruct a probable scene. We assume, basing our assumption on modern history, that Mu expanded while her civilization was in its early stages. We therefore picture to ourselves an ancient craft leaving the shores of Mu, the motherland, manned by a crew of stalwart young adventurers with milk-white skins, blue eyes, and light flaxen hair. When their craft was fairly launched upon the eastern sea, they pointed its prow toward the rising sun. They were called the Quetzals in the motherland on account of their making the venomous serpent Quetzalcoatl their symbol for the creator and creation. At the end of the moon's journey, as the rays of the morning sun were lighting up the horizon ahead, the crew saw ahead of their craft a long line of surf breaking on a low sandy shore with a low rolling country beyond. On nearing the surf, they turned the prow of their craft and skirted the shoreline until they came to a stretch of less turbulent water. This they crossed and found themselves at the mouth of a river. They proceeded inland until they came to a suitable landing place where they drew their boat up on the bank and made camp. From the camp they explored the surrounding country, finding it unoccupied by man and eminently adapted for a settlement. They then returned to the motherland with the good news. The country which they discovered was America, as we call it today, and the particular spot in North America where they landed was Mexico, as we know it today. Now, like I said, this begins the line of Esau. In ancient Italy, exactly 2 cursed earth periods of 414 years each, or 828 years, before the founding of Rome in the year 753 BC. So a year later, in 1580 BC, Libyan ships from King Angeus They plundered the coast of Italia in a campaign of piracy. And Zepho, now in Italia, formerly in service to King Angeus, so he knew the very men that were attacking. But now Zepho's in Italia, and he assembles a force and he repels these attackers. The locals considered Zepho as a hero now. The more we study in anthropology all the belief systems around the world, we don't find hardly anything about a belief in beings among the stars and beings. No, we find almost everything points to underground. There was all kinds of, there's some type of cave entrance in a forest or in the mountains or in the hills. The Durgar, the dark dwarves, the elves, the realm of Niflheim, Shambhala. All these places were underground. It's a lot of popular authors and researchers, you know their names, that are putting out this Ice Age material. The exact opposite is true. The exact opposite. It wasn't an Ice Age, guys. Megafauna were in a very warm to subtropical world. It's called the vapor canopy period. All that snow and ice came from the collapsed vapor canopy. When that mesosphere collapsed, all that snow and ice went to the Arctic and the Antarctic. That's where it went. While the equatorial region remained basically packed full of life forms. However, the oxygen had been greatly diminished, so creatures couldn't grow to that size anymore. The megafauna died out. The ones that weren't frozen, yeah, they're really pushing. Even in the alt history groups, they're really pushing that Ice Age deal. But the truth of the matter is, and anybody can verify this, there are over 58 or 59, maybe 60 Ice Age theories. And they're all different from each other. How Ice Ages could even be possible. And they won't tell you this. You got to go to the specialist literature to find this out. But that's how iffy the whole situation is. They can't nail it down, because every time they nail down how the Ice Ages were even possible, other scientists bring evidence to the forefront. So, well, that can't be true because of this. That can't be. This has happened so many times that the Ice Age theory had to be revamped 59 times. Yeah, guys, they won't tell you this, but Jason will. Jason will tell you, because they're all full of shit. Ice Ages are bullshit. They never happened. They never happened. The third of that series, called The Great Deceit, is Yahweh, the God of Murder. And I show, using nothing but the biblical scriptures, over 100 scriptures, I show you exactly the personality of this deity. And it's nothing like the personality of the one we call Jesus in the New Testament. They are complete opposites. But there's going to come a time when we can't even enjoy this anymore. And when the internet is completely gone, that's when a lot of people are going to realize just how small their world really is. Really is. It's going to be a sad day for a lot of people. Yeah, I'm not trying to be a doomsayer, guys. I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. When I talk about these things like this in the negative, I'm really talking about the collective, because true spiritual beings aren't going to panic. The true, highly individualized spiritual being who is known to the oversoul, who is connected to source, is always going to prevail despite the circumstances. No matter what goes on anywhere in the world, in any place, that individual is going to thrive. And it doesn't even matter how many enemies try to come against it, because they're all a part of and driven by and empowered by the construct. And the construct itself can never override even one soul that is connected to source. Can't do it. Can't do it. So I'm running my mouth again. I still haven't taken any questions. I guess that was a question. Astral projection and a deal. Yeah, I don't want to offend you, man, by saying these things don't exist. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying so far nobody's come to me to allow me to put it to the test publicly, because I'm not going to do it in private. We're going to make that test public. Yeah, anybody OBE channels out there, any channeler channels, any astral projection channels, you want to come on my channel, that's cool. We're going to put it to the test, and I'm going to report to you real fast whether they pass or failed. Because if they passed, they're going to get some exclusive time on Archaix to tell their story, tell how they do it, tell us about the experience, what's going on. Hey, man, I'm going to give them free reign. It gives an entirely new meaning to the passage in the New Testament that says that Jesus descended into hell, into Hades. That's the Greek word. And Hades was a real place in the underworld. Yeah, it's a place where a civilization thrived. It's a place that was known by its four rivers. And it's a place that an entire race was banished from. And their banishment and curse was that they had to leave paradise and go to the surface and work and toil and slave for their existence and their food. We're gonna get into this presentation. You gotta make it through the presentation. The jar contains something that Pandora would be curious about. The tree contained something that Eve would be curious about. I'm not saying Pandora is real. I'm not saying Eve is real. I'm saying that concepts are being married here by institutions in the ancient world that were one, basically fighting a war against matriarchy from a patriarchal perspective, and two, that were applying concepts to memories and turning them into pronouns. We're talking about events in the ancient world, not people. So, Zeus did this and blamed the jar, the container, for releasing all these things into the world. In the pitch black of night, you can look deep in the water, in the ocean, and there's underwater lightning that shows the way to the nearest islands if you are in between those islands. If you go off course, you will not see underwater lightning. It won't be visible to you. His original name wasn't Enki. Enki's just a title. It just means Lord of the Earth. But it's talking about an actual personality, a benefactor personality who was condemned later, but he had done something very valuable for humanity. But the condemnation didn't come from humanity. The condemnation came from other gods who were offended that he had included humanity into some divine purpose, some knowledge humans were not meant to have. So he became the trickster. He was labeled the trickster, and as the trickster, he is known through all the Native American legends. He is a trickster that other gods despise, but he always benefits humanity. I told you guys over and over, and I'm never gonna back up from this tenet. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yeah, they haven't met that standard by a long shot. Yeah, you can't create a 5,000-year gulf. It's just not going to happen, guys. Just not going to happen. And what I mean is we can show that almost every technologically advanced civilization in the past fits in a 5,000-year window. We don't have any written records. So the events are real, and historians do back it up that there were these population shifts and that they went from Egypt to Greece. Some of them went from Egypt to Phoenicia in the Levant area. And then within 80 to 200 years, fleet after fleet after fleet from the Levant, what the Bible calls Israel, then rejoined their cousins in Greece after the collapse of Argos. Argos was a pre-Greek civilization. And once it collapsed, more and more Greeks came in. Now we have the Achaeans, and the Danan became the Greek people. You have to understand, a tree has leaves or needles. Those are tens of thousands of little resonators. It's all about frequency. That trunk is a gigantic antenna, and it is grounded by thousands of roots and they go underground. The tree is interconnected with every other tree in the forest. Therefore, they touch. Underground, this whole network is all interwoven with each other. Some roots touch and meld into others, and the trees exchange data. They exchange information. This has been proven. The informed fields of trees have been shown to change under different whatever equipment they were using to monitor them, when a tree was burning a mile away, trees had a definitive reaction. There's an energy field to them. You can tap into that. Trees can magnify what the human is already projecting. Use them wisely. My video goes into that. As many of you know, all these ancient Vedic calendars, Sanskrit timekeeping systems, all the Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian, impossible to date time, 400 and 500,000, 500,000 year texts of the Anunnaki, all these old Babylonian mistranslations of older Sumerian pictograms and logographic material, every bit of that's been corrected in the Archaix. This is why the chronology promoted in the Archaix research not only makes sense, but can be supported with a calculator. And I have shown in many, many, many videos that all these impossible long dates promoted by Zecharia Sitchin and all those who follow him can easily be abbreviated, not as years, but as days. Because Shar meant unit of time, turning of the stars. It never meant year at all. And this was known by Sumerologists before Zecharia Sitchin ever published his books. The artificial intelligence, if you were to tell artificial intelligence, this statement is a lie, or this statement is false, artificial intelligence will go into a logic loop. How will it ever figure out that statement? This statement is false. Because if the statement is truly false, like the statement asserts, then it's telling the truth. This statement is a lie. Hunter king dynasties of Assyria were now coming to power, and the Hittites were growing stronger. And for these reasons, the political instabilities in Egypt increased. Zepho knew there was no better time to attack Egypt than right then. He was thirsty for revenge against the Amuru, these ancient Israelites, but King Angeus refused, and Zepho was enraged. He departed Libya and sailed to Italia, where he became an instant hero for slaying a Sasquatch-type man-beast that was in a cave that was terrorizing the locals by eating their livestock. In fact, there are at least 24 ancient crucified gods way before Christianity came into existence. But Christianity is not the origin of the faith in the Word made flesh. It is not the origin of God manifesting in the form of a man and teaching great things. This has happened repetitively. A benefactor has entered into this construct when he was needed and performed this multiple times. You guys need to read Jasher, but at this defeat, the infamous Mesopotamian seer named Balaam, y'all remember Balaam in the Bible, he departed the court of Angeus in Libya and took up with Zepho's court in Italia. Emboldened by this victory, Zepho then sails a fleet to Canaan and joins forces with his Edomite brothers and the Ishmaelites. They attack Egypt, but they're unsuccessful, and Zepho escapes back to Italia, bringing with him ships full of Edomites and Ishmaelites who become the new nobility in Italia among the Kittim. This was 2484 years, or 138 times 18 years, since the capture of Luna in the year 4039 BC, when the Igigi arrived, and 684 years after the Great Flood. These events are followed in the year 1534 BC. Zepho is now king of the Kittim, grandson of Esau, and he dies in Italia in the 705th year after the flood. Andrew goes on and says, on page 16, chapter 2, Novelties and Antiquity, he says that the city of Pompeii in Italy actually used arm-waving traffic policemen to cope with the population and congestion. Pompeii and Vesuvius had street signs, and the same street signs that were found 2,000 years earlier in Babylon. Not much has changed. We got traffic cops today and street signs. In the ancient Assyrian ruins of Nineveh, archaeologists in Assyria have found no parking signs were displayed in front of temples and government buildings. You couldn't put your wagon or chariot or horse in front of them. You couldn't park. Ain't no different than today. Go to Houston. You'll see no parking signs everywhere. It also had royal road signs, let no man obstruct it. So the rules back then were you could travel on a royal road. You could even have your wagon, cart, merchandise, whatever. But as soon as dignitaries or royal members or somebody who had authorization to use the road was on it, you better get your ass off of it because they weren't playing no games. And then you could get right back on it as soon as they passed. Hell yeah, we got that today. That's what he said. He believes he did. But if it's true, if astral projection is real, then it must be performed by someone. If it's something that is real, then there's going to be someone in this world who can do it. They need to come on my channel and prove that then, because I have a method to prove if you can astral project or not. Because if you can't do what I ask you to do, you're full of shit. It's as simple as that. It's super simple test. Just like the channeling. If you're channeling an entity that is not in our dimension, and I know it's not in our dimension because we can't see it. That's why you got to channel it. If you're channeling an entity and any type of intelligence that is disembodied or has a body in another dimension, and you can channel this intellect, it's real simple. I'm not going to call you a liar. I'm just going to make you look like one when I ask you questions that you cannot answer. Because if you can channel this entity, then you can sure as hell take Jason's 10 Archaix questions and ask whoever you're channeling and then give us the answers real quick. My problem with channeling is many of the people who have channeled on YouTube that I've heard mention anachronistic material, meaning their narratives contained chronological markers that were in error. It was information that they inserted in their narrative that they thought was true that they got from somewhere else. When it comes to chronology, I'm not going to be undermined. I can be corrected, but you got to show me the math. Got to show me the math. But when it comes to chronology, that is my passion. That is my lifeblood. That is my area of expertise. And thus far, I haven't found any researchers that disagree with that because I'm still waiting for that disagreement. But I've heard many chronological errors from people who claim to have OBEs, channeling. Some of these OBEs talk about they go back in time to different things, and the things they talk about weren't even unfolding in that time period. Yeah, dumbest thing to do if you're going to lie is throw out a date because you're going to get caught. So, yeah, I'm not saying channeling isn't true. I'm not saying astral projection isn't true. But what I'm saying is so far, nobody's contacted Jason of Archaix and put it to the test. Nobody. Almost instantly, he raised an army and conquered Sicily and extended the domain of the Kittim in Italia. Many years go by as he continues to strengthen his position in ancient Italy. In the year 1567 BC, it was in the 13th year of the reign of Zepho over the Kittim in Italia, that the king of Kadesh, northern Syria, or the Holy City, leads the Syrians, Hittites, and Canaanites and heads toward Egypt. But Pharaoh Thutmose III defeats the Confederacy in the famous Valley of Megiddo, aka Armageddon, beginning a career of 17 military campaigns against Canaan and Syria for their participation in that invasion. Back in the 1890s, during my trip to Central America, I obtained from Indians the information that far back in the dense forests of Honduras and Guatemala, there still exist villages of blonde white Indians. One of these Indians claimed to have lived for several weeks among their villages. He obtained from them the most authentic account of the Quetzals that I have ever heard. Their language is Maya, and they claim that they are the descendants of those who fled the forest when their king Quetzal was conquered and overthrown. Their may be other cities, but archaeologists haven't found them. But at Antioch in Syria, the cradle of Christianity itself, which, you know, Antioch is far older than Christianity, but it's where Christianity began. And archaeologists have found streetlights there. Also, in the Americas, the Aztecs set a permanent colored strip directly into the paved road of the Aztecs had long roads. And what archaeologists have found is that these painted stripes that we have to differentiate between lanes of traffic, the Aztecs were already doing that. They painted their roads to show that you had one-way traffic this way and reverse traffic the other way. It's crazy. Not much has changed. An engineer of Alexandria named Heron built a steam engine which embodied the principles of both the turbine and jet propulsion. What? So did many other ancient famous people. Councils and whole cities, whole countries sent delegations to the oracles. So, and you have to understand, the people that were running these shrines and oracles, there was nothing dumb about them. They knew that a lot of times the same group of people would send envoys to all three shrines, but not tell the other two they'd done it. And they still came out with the same answers. Hunter king dynasties of Assyria were now coming to power, and the Hittites were growing stronger. And for these reasons, the political instabilities in Egypt increased. Zepho knew there was no better time to attack Egypt than right then. He was thirsty for revenge against the Amuru, these ancient Israelites, but King Angeus refused, and Zepho was enraged. He departed Libya and sailed to Italia, where he became an instant hero for slaying a Sasquatch-type man-beast that was in a cave that was terrorizing the locals by eating their livestock. There's only 8 survivors. You believe that the Genesis version, which was written and invented by Jewish scribes in Babylon that were reading all these ancient all these epics and putting all this narrative together. But we have many cultures and races that have their own histories that have gone through the collapse of the vapor canopy, and they survived. There's too much genetic diversity, but there is one group of families of people who had a flood tradition. Their homeland was absolutely flooded. That's why they left North America and came to what we call the Old World. And this is the subject matter for a lot of historians in the late 1800s. They were going deep, and the books are here, and we're going to get to them. I've already covered some of this in my Anuna files, but Thor Heyerdahl and Lenormand and some other historians kind of got in trouble for talking about these things. Professor Waddell kind of got in trouble for talking about these things, called a racist, called all kinds of things. But we're going to get into it because, like I said, it's too late to be polite. So after the flood, they were no longer called Anuna. They were the Amuru. Some of you just had some light bulbs pop off in your head. Each individual person that participates in this group dynamic chooses a character that their spirit wants to experience. Their spirit is guiding the choices. They want to be a human fighter paladin who only exercises violence for good or for holy causes. So they spend their points on strength and in dexterity, and they want a higher constitution so they can stay healthier. They can hold their breath longer. So they choose special abilities that have things to do with monks and priests and all that, because they're not just a warrior, they're a holy warrior. Souls are awakening to the understanding that they are not their avatars, that the world is a medium of sense perception and not a true habitat. From the youth in their musings to the theoretical physicist in their studies, we are seeing past the illusory programming and breaking free of the confines of the construct.